Pretty mysterious thing happens about 2 weeks after you've published a song. It doesn't matter where you publish it. I happen to publish my songs on YouTube. On the left hand side over here you can see the 20 songs that I've written during the time that I've been running One Man and His Songs, and these Back on Track series basically chart the progress of each one of those songs. I didn't do a Back on Track series for Undertow because I temporarily or briefly toyed with abandoning the concept, and I really regret it because it's the fundamental centre of everything that my channel is. I'm a songwriter. The whole point of calling the channel One Man and His Songs is because I do all the stuff myself. My wife Pauline sings on the songs, but other than that I do absolutely everything myself, and it's all about the songs. The tutorial videos and the other stuff that I do, plug-in deep dives and whatnot, that's all a means to an end. It's all to help give me more tools in my toolbox in order to be able to write better songs. But if I can't do that, the rest of it's pointless. The thing is though, you have no idea when you're doing it, sorry. I have no idea when I'm doing it, when I'm writing the song, how good it is. And this is why this mysterious thing happens a couple of weeks after you've published it. You go back and listen to it for the first time with consumers' ears, and you find out whether or not you've written a good song. I cannot link those two things together. Now, I can get an idea. I always have a sense of whether or not it's going to be a particularly good one, but I think at the end of almost every one of these series, I've said something along the lines of, I'm really pleased with this one, I'm happy with the outcome. And yet, when I go back and listen to some of them, there are 2 or 3 in particular that I quite strongly dislike and actually intend to abandon. That's something I'll talk about shortly in a moment. How the hell could I have got that so wrong? It's the same ears consuming this stuff. Obviously, when you're in the production process, you're writing the song itself, and specifically when you get down to mixing and production, it's really, really easy to get lost. You can't see the wood for the trees sort of thing. And so that sense of separation, coming back and listening to a finished product with no intention of doing any more tweaks on it, that's when you really hear it with new ears for the first time. But what do you do when it's not fabulous? Well, if you're me, then you have this kind of underlying sense of disappointment that you didn't quite reach the target. And the fact is that there's going to be one song in your entire life that's the best thing you ever did. That's a statement of fact. That's a deterministic fact. Every other song that you ever write is not going to be as good as the best song you write. And so what are you going to do about that? You're going to be disappointed 99% of the time. Well, up until now, the answer for me has been kind of yeah, because the vast majority of the time I do hear the flaws in my song and it becomes difficult for me to appreciate the good stuff. So I'm actively working to improve that aspect of my songwriting process and the appreciation of the music that I've written, because only by identifying the good stuff can you think I'll do that again. Now, there's kind of a dual nature to my personality. Primarily, I'm a fundamentally emotionally driven person, so I feel this stuff really intensely when I listen to a song. It can very easily make me cry. Films, whatever, all sorts of art forms can reduce me to a blubbering wreck. And yet I'm also capable of doing the absolutely cold, clinical, detached thing where I'll break a thing down to try to identify good points and bad points and get spreadsheets out and do all sorts of analysis. Those two aspects of my personality, whilst diametrically opposed, have to come together in complete union in order for me to write a song. And managing those two parts of my personality is really difficult. So when I'm writing a song here, I'm writing River Song at the moment. It's kind of hidden behind me. You can just see a little bit of it poking out. This is the guitar solo down here. I wrote that guitar solo by closing my eyes, leaning back and absolutely lacing into it. Every one of those phrases came out of complete inspiration. It doesn't matter whether or not you like the phrase, that's irrelevant, but it wasn't structured from any technical perspective at all. It was me just basically playing emotionally. I'll then go back and listen to every one of those phrases individually and basically rank them. And obviously some of that's going to be from an emotional perspective, but also there's this really analytical kind of, is that phrase any good? Is that single phrase any good? And one of the issues that I'm continually trying to address with my songs is, when is it okay, or how much is it okay to go back to keep on reworking these songs? This generates another really interesting dichotomy, because I generally don't like listening to other people's remixes of their songs. Once they've done a thing, I'm happy with that. I don't really want to listen to new versions of it. But I completely subvert that opinion when it comes to my own music. I really like attempting to improve songs that I've written previously. In fact, a couple of songs that I've written on this channel, Hummingbird, Snowfall, I can't remember if there was a third one, I've explicitly gone back and done basically remixed versions of them, attempted to improve using the technical skills that I've gained over the last couple of years, but also listening to individual phrases, maybe a section of lyrics that I think it's just not good enough. When I wrote it, I thought it was great. Now I come back and think it's either cheesy, naive, pompous. There's all sorts of ways that it can be, that a section of music can be wrong. Trying to come up with some kind of plan as to how often you can go back in and tinker with those things is something that constantly occupies me. At the moment, my opinion is all bets are off. If I want to go back in and rework a song every year for the rest of my life, absolutely, who's going to stop me? It's entirely possible that at some point I'll get to the stage where I listen to that song and I think, that is absolutely as good as I'm ever going to be able to do. I love every single section of it. There's no piece of music I've ever written about which I can say that. And so is it okay to carry on going in and fixing these things? So here we come to another branch point. I'm making all sorts of notes about this stuff and, doing graphs and family trees. There's a branch point here. There's songs that can be fixed. Perfect case in point for this, for illustrating this point, is Breath of Air. This song here isn't very good. It's technically poorly produced, but the idea behind the song, the melodies, the structure, is fine. In fact, no, it's better than fine. I really like it. In fact, it's one of the songs that's made it onto the shortlist for the songs that are going to become The River, which is the album that I'm in the process of writing at the moment. But it's certainly the weakest song of the songs that made the cut, and it needs the most work doing on it. That's an example of a song where I just didn't quite reach the bar that I set myself when I came up with the idea of that song, and I came up with the basic concepts. But the fundamental structure of the song is worth saving. That's the conclusion that I've reached, and so it's worth working on. Other songs in this list, probably the best example is Monster. Where's Monster? Up here. That's a song that is going to get abandoned. And the reason is because I wrote it from a very unusual perspective. It's a story song, which I don't generally tend to do, and it's a story from the perspective of a psychopath. Now, I'm not a psychopath. I just happened to be writing the song while there was an apocalyptic storm raging outside one night, one miserable, dreary winter's night when wind was howling at the window. And I just started coming up with this story of this man kind of struggling through the wind, and it ended up being the story about this psychopath. Now, at the time, I loved those lyrics. I thought they were the best thing that I'd ever written. And I was showing them to everyone who would listen and, making people absolutely sick with me constantly going on about how good this thing was going to be. And it's the least favourite of all of the songs that I've ever written, because I got carried away in the pomp and ceremony of the song and ended up writing something that wasn't true to me. I don't have any emotional resonance to it. Pauline struggled singing the lyrics for exactly the same reason. She found it a bit ooky, writing a song about this serial killer. And the whole thing just kind of fell flat. The music behind it also struggled. Because the lyrics so heavily dominated that song, it's one of the very rare examples where lyrics came first and the music came later, and I just could never get my head around it. So the music for the song isn't very good at all. Ergo, there's no point trying to save it. That's a dead duck. Let it go. One more category of song that I want to talk very briefly about today is something that kind of falls in between those two stools. This is a song called Masquerade. This was the other story song. Of these 20 songs, 2 of them are story songs. Masquerade is the second. And this is also a kind of a bit out of left field, and certainly nothing to do with me as a person. This is a song written from the perspective of a vampire. The difference between this and Monster is that the music behind the song Masquerade is really good. There are aspects of it that I'm very, very happy with. It's just that the lyrics suck. So I need to pull that song to bits and find the good bits. But I'm completely happy repurposing the song if I think, there's enough legs in there. So what kind of conclusion am I coming to? When is a song good enough? When is a song acceptable? Well, there are no rules. I think I can do whatever I want, and I'm going to do whatever I want. And I'm going to go back into Masquerade and strip bits of that song out and repurpose them into a brand new song. It'll be called a different thing, but it'll have lots of the same musical motifs, because fundamentally that's the structure, that's the DNA of the song. Sometimes something like Monster is just so far away from what you wanted that you just need to let it go. Trying to bring that back to life is going to be more effort than it's worth, and just don't. But I think it's an absolutely fascinating subject and something that I'm spending an enormous amount of time thinking about. But I've babbled on enough for today, so I'll stop. Thanks very much for listening. Hope you enjoyed this little diatribe. If you did, please hit like, and I'll see you next time. Thanks very much.